You're listening to Vantage Revival. Please enjoy this encore presentation of Season 1, Episode 2, Urban Legend, originally uploaded September 16th of 2021. Today on Vantage Revival, we watch a TriStar Pictures production directed by Jamie Blanks and released in September of this week's chosen year, 1998. This horror film follows a group of friends trying to escape revengeful murders mimicked from older tales. With Rebecca Gayheart, Tara Reid, and Jared Leto, this movie is filled with big names and big plot twists. Urban Legend, now playing on Player's Choice of the Decades, Vantage Revival. So the first thing that I want to talk about is so outside the box, but the first thing I noticed was the gas prices.
What was it? I didn't pay attention.
The gas price was $1.14. Which for us in Canada, that's realistic, but back then, so in comparison, that would be like $3.30 nowadays for the US.
Holy.
Yeah, so when I saw that, I'm like, whoa, gas was really low back then in the 90s. And I remember that because like my first job was actually a gas station.
Yeah.
And the gas was like 55 cents.
Hola.
Yeah, I haven't seen 55 cents since then.
Well, we did a one of the gas stations here did
right, they did that like the
1930s, I think it was, or something like that. It was like the price back in 19 whatever, and it was like 30 cents. Okay.
The lineup was across the entire city, and they had to like stop it.
We will never
like...
see that again. I'm surprised if we'll ever see under $1 again.
Yeah, I can't see it happening.
So weird thing that I noticed too at the gas station was she went to go pay with her MasterCard, and you know when you get those flyers in the mail that's like, sign up for our MasterCard, just a giant MasterCard logo on a piece of plastic. I'm like, yeah, that looks right. Just cut it out. You're useless.
Hey, it's cheaper than signing up, I guess. So the opening of that movie, I think, is infamous because, you know, you go into it, you're thinking, oh my God, like the gas station attendant is going to kill this poor girl at the gas station.
Yeah. So I knew that there was something.
Like a twist coming.
There was something coming, but not what it was for sure.
Do you know who that guy was? Like in real life? Like that actor?
No.
That was Brad Dourif, who is the voice and actor of Chucky from Child's Play.
Oh, what?
Cool to see him in a role that's not Chucky-based. Speaking of guest appearances, did you also know that the teacher, the professor in this movie, is Robert Englund, who is Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, really cool. It's cool how they kind
cameos,
of like do these things, and I think he was bigger than a cameo. Like Brad Dourif was definitely a cameo, but Robert Englund, he was a character in this movie.
Yeah,
so.
definitely.
I noticed we were watching that you were laughing at the girl singing.
That is my first note of this movie. Because so the thing is love singing in front of people. Like, and I love singing at karaoke and all that stuff, but when I'm in the car, I kind of do that thing where like I know all the words to a song, but I'll sing exactly the way she does, one note behind me, pretending I don't know what the next word is. That's exactly how so I was just picturing myself just jamming out to, I can't remember even what song it was, but it was making me laugh. So bad.
Just live in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So funny. I also noticed at the gas station that she left the car running when we were pumping the gas. Like,
don't do that.
Like, that's a fire hazard, people. Like, please do not do that.
Please stop your car.
But to be fair, working at a gas station at a young age, I think I was like 13. Like, I was way too young to be working at a gas station.
Jeez.
Yeah. But people did the dumbest stuff, including myself. You know, 13-year-olds should not work at gas stations.
Mm-hmm. Or in general, but yep.
Keep in mind that I had never even pumped gas before. So, like, I'm working at this gas station from the ground up. My very first day, the person training me is like, hey, we're going to fill up this guy's tank. And I'm like nervous, super nervous. And he's like, hey, grab the nozzle. So I did. And as a kid, a stupid kid, I guess, I squeezed like the trigger of the handle and like nothing came out obviously at this point, and we had to like flip up a switch for it to start pumping. And so I was squeezing and I flipped that switch and the gasoline came out everywhere. I sprayed the guy that was training me. I sprayed the person who was driving the car. I sprayed all over the car. They're screaming at me like, stop, stop. And I'm like, I don't know how. And it's like, just let go. Like, let go. 13-year-olds should not work at gas stations. Even outside of my stupidity, like, we had someone pump their gas and then start their car as it was pumping and drove to go park their car.
What?
Yeah, like they weren't even done pumping their gas yet, and they were going to go park to go pay for the gas. Because at this small town, we were quite busy. We were right beside a highway, so you had to move your car, go park it, then pay. Where like now you have to prepay. Like that wasn't really a thing back in the day. So like people are really stupid. Really stupid. So I'm not completely surprised that she didn't turn off her car to fill her gas tank. So I did enjoy the twist at the beginning with the, there's someone in the back seat. Yeah. Here's a question for you. If you were a worker somewhere, let's say you were a gas station attendant, would you tell someone you see someone in their back seat?
Like the way that he did, or would I? Well,
because I feel like we didn't really see what he saw. Like we don't know if he saw the person moving around or like hiding behind something. It could just be a person sleeping for all he knew, right? So if you saw someone in the back seat of someone's car, would you say something?
No, but where is this going? Because I once had someone sleeping in the backseat of my car. And no one ever said anything to me.
No, I feel like someone did. I feel like someone was like, hey, Marissa, there's someone inside your car.
That did happen. Started a new job 3 days in. Someone came and said, is there someone sleeping in the back of your car? So like, yeah, I guess people do tell me what I tell somebody. No, that's their business, man. That's their business. If someone's in the backseat of their car, that's their business.
So how did you feel about the first death? The girl driving the car got her head chopped off with an axe.
To be honest, she was a minor character in the movie.
But was she?
Well, no, she wasn't. She was a huge character in the movie. But at the time, she was only in the movie for 2.5 minutes. So I didn't really have any attachment to her. And I kind of thought she was a little bitchy. I try to be nice to people who are going to pump my gas. And this chick was just like really mean.
I mean...
Right? He could have been a 13-year-old on his first day. I'm not going to be mean to the guy.
You'd be surprised.
Right?
But I think her being mean, as we see later on in the movie, is who she was.
Exactly. So the first death didn't faze me all that much. I feel like it came very quickly in the movie.
It did.
But yeah, no attachment to her, so.
I thought she was a really bad actress, so I was like, thank God she's dead. But again, you only have a couple minutes with her. You don't have much time to really develop anything.
And like you say, knowing who she is, it's... Yeah, good riddance to you.
I was curious with the scene in the lecture hall where they did the pop rocks and pop scene.
If I'm being honest, from moment one of seeing the professor, I placed my bet that he would be the murderer. And then watching the pop rock scene, I feel like that...
Like hinted more towards it?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, for sure. It's the professor because he's crazy.
Did you fall for that fake death?
No.
No?
So I just knew. I knew that it was a joke. I did not buy it. And obviously, you can't die from eating Pop Rocks and drinking soda. So what would have happened, right? That's the thing. I think not watching horror and knowing a bit of how it goes, I think I always expect what not to be expected. They would kill somebody by making him drink Pop Rocks and Coke. So it's not gonna happen type thing, right?
How do you feel though if you had been in that audience of the school? If you had seen someone, do you think you would have thought it was a prank? Like in real life, if you put yourself in a situation.
Maybe back then, yes. There was no YouTube that you could watch people debunk these pranks and stuff. So yeah, unless you know for sure, there's no answers, and it probably would be pretty realistic and terrifying.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. We didn't have ways of debunking things. You had to do said situation, or you had to know someone who had to be like, no, that's fake. I do agree that, yeah, back then it would have been way more realistic to think these things are real because there was no way to confirm that they weren't. So does that mean that urban legends in general, like not even movies, but actual urban legends, are they less effective now? Or are they irrelevant because of the way that we can research?
Yes, they are irrelevant. You know what? I think everybody nowadays thinks that everything's fake, regardless of if it's real or not.
We just default to
it's fake.
Yeah.
You know, like I had someone I knew, they went on a bike trip and it was in the middle of summer and all of a sudden there was a giant snowstorm and it was terrifying. So they posted on Facebook, got a bunch of views on it. Oh, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. Who's gonna take the time to Photoshop some snow in to get some clout on Facebook?
I mean, I've seen even like photoshopped pictures that are deemed to be real. I'm standing in the rain and it's like, but your hair is dry, but your shirt's wet. Like you got your shirt wet and you threw some effects of rain. I get why people would question if these things are doctored.
That's the thing. Back in 1998, none of that would have been questioned. Everything would have just went, yeah, that's real. You know, maybe not the Photoshop with the hair dry. Like, they're not stupid.
But like actual like urban legends.
Everything nowadays is just fake, 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 fake. When back then, everything was like, ooh, that could be real.
Growing up in a time that wasn't the 90s, did you have any urban legends you heard growing up?
I mean, I think the classic ones, like obviously everyone hears about the hook in the car door, Bloody Mary, that one. Oh my gosh. I had a friend scare the shit out of us. At her birthday, we played Bloody Mary and her dad actually got dressed in like a gown and hid in the bathtub and jumped out and scared us. It was awesome. But not a whole lot, honestly. We got taught the urban legends from the 90s. But which also came from like the 70s, the 60s, and kept going, right? But we were also taught that they were not real. That's fair. We had a local urban legend. I grew up in a small town that lots of bad things happened in. It was a mining town. A mountain fell over. Like, a lot of things happened, right? So there's going to be a good foundation for starting these ghost stories or these urban legends. But there was one just outside of our small town. They claimed that a lady got into a car accident and her baby died. She was driving with her baby and they both died in this car accident. And if you go out to the certain part of the road, you can still see the color of blood on the road. And if you stay there long enough, you'll hear a baby crying. Ooh. Yeah. So as a teenager, of course, we went out and investigated. Of course. And I'm not sure what it was, but yes, the rocks on that part of the road were red of color, rusty looking, which I mean, there's lots of like rocks that can change into different colors. So does not mean it was blood. It looked as if there could have been a smearing of some sort of red liquid at some point. Never heard a baby crying or anything like that, but that was a big urban legend for us, is like you go out there and you'll hear this crying of the baby. Sorry, I'm thinking of this thing that we have now. Okay. That is called Randonautica, and it's an app that it just gives you random coordinates around your city. You kind of like manifest what you're wanting to see. So if you're wanting to be spooked, you manifest this. Then this app Randonautica will give you random coordinates in your city, and you go to it and you're supposed to like find something there that you're searching for. But there's like something really serious that happened. Was like this group of TikTokers went on this app and they went to these coordinates and they found a suitcase washed up on the shore, and they opened it up and it was a dead body. And this is real. Like, this is a news story, everything. Like, this is a real thing. And I feel like that's today's like search for that craziness, you know? Like, back then you played Bloody Mary and you sprayed water on a mirror or whatever. And today there's an app for that. There's literally an app to get spooked in random places, right? Now I want to play with this app. So. I know. I've been scared to download it because people see some crazy, and like I said, a lot of it could be, or a lot of it might be fake, and that's today's generation being like, nah, that's fake. But I know for a fact, I did tons of research that these kids found a body in a suitcase in an ocean because of this Randonautica app. It's crazy. I want to talk about the characters a little bit. Mm-hmm. So one of them was named Sasha, and she is played by Tara Reid, who I absolutely adore. I think Tara Reid is a funny actress. I feel like she's not given the credit that she deserves for the horrible movies she makes, but I do like her. What? You're making a face. I looked up Tara Reid, and there's a picture of her side by side with Carol Baskin, because apparently she might play Carol Baskin in her role. I hope she does. She'd be great. Oh, yeah. She would be great.
I was kind of disappointed because I feel like at this point she was getting famous because she was from American Pie. And I felt like they didn't utilize her very much.
She really was not in it all that
No,
much.
and like, you know, she had like the radio show, and I felt like that would have been a great way. Like, she should have been the driving force of telling the news stories to everyone, but she only had her like sex talk show.
Yeah.
So we had Natalie, who was the main character. I really liked her. Like, I've watched this movie numerous times. This is my pick for the week. And I've watched this movie and I've never really noticed how good of a character she actually is. She is strong, but not in an overbearing way. She stands up for herself, like in the car scene where he wanted to have sex with her. You know, it wasn't just like, oh no, don't do that. Like, she's like, no, we're not doing this. It was firm, you know, it wasn't this coy little trying to keep the men, you know, not mad at you. Like, no, she was a strong character, and like, she punched a guy, like...
I was gonna say, I noticed that she just didn't care. She was going to go help her friends. She knew there was a murderer running around, and she's constantly chasing that murderer to try and save her friends, right? And
yeah, and usually in these movies, you kind of see the opposite, where they're just running away from the murderer. You know, and they could almost care less about their friends. Like, I just want to live.
make it out alive, yeah.
Yeah, I just really, really enjoyed that aspect of the writing, and her performance with it is that she actually was a strong female character that cared about everybody. Probably cared about herself the least. And you don't see that in many horror movies. You will see a tough girl, but she'll be overbearing. Oh, I'm tough and you better listen to me, you know, and that's not what she was. She was like, okay, yeah.
She's strong, yeah.
Yeah, she was just strong. And like, that is something really refreshing to see in a horror movie. That she wasn't just crying, she wasn't just running. She knew what she had to do, and she was actively trying to solve these problems.
Yeah, she was trying to figure it out.
Go Natalie.
Yay, Natalie.
Damon. He was from Dawson's Creek. It was cool to see him there. They had a little nod to Dawson's Creek. He turned on his radio and the theme music came on. He's like, yeah, and he's like, oh, what's this? Like, and
I
like,
knew
turned
that
it
was
on.
the theme music, but I had no idea he was in Dawson's Creek. So that's funny.
Yeah, so I like a little nod to that. And I like that about 90s movies, is that they did give credit to the things they were working on.
Yeah.
Where I feel like movies nowadays, they separate themselves.
You're only working on this.
Like the Sarah Burgess, she's from Stranger Things. They could have maybe referenced
Yeah.
something, but they didn't. And they don't have to. It's a separate movie. But I like that little hinting at their past works.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I love when they do that. I think it's so funny.
So I want to talk about Damon's death. And this is where there is a huge plot hole for me. And I won't share the twist of who the killer is just yet. We'll kind of say that for the end, I feel.
Yeah.
But when he dies, he is hung by a rope over a car. And that rope is put around his neck while he is out peeing out in the woods. Like, he's not even close to the car at this point. But the killer puts the rope around his neck and then somehow goes back to the car without him and attacks Natalie while she's in the car. You know, so Natalie's freaking out like, oh my god, what's happening? Who is this person attacking me? And she's still in the car, and then all of a sudden she hears like tapping on the roof of her car.
Yeah.
And there's Damon hanging from a tree above her car. I don't understand how said killer was able to put a rope around this guy's neck, drag him back to the car without killing him or knocking him out, then lifting him on top of the car without Natalie seeing any of this.
Yes.
And then still like hang him and have the strength to pull him over that car and then attach that rope to the car.
And that is one thing I thought too, because first of all, the timing is just way off. There's no way. But secondly, knowing the killer, I just, you know what, I'm curious.
I think even if we didn't know who the killer was, I don't think any
It's still
person
not.
is physically strong enough to do all of that on their own.
It's not possible at all.
And because he wasn't knocked out, he would have been fighting the entire time.
Yeah. And like you say, Natalie just doesn't notice this. And doesn't Natalie come out of the car at one point before going back in before...
Yes, because she's looking for him.
Yes.
And she gets scared and goes back into the driver's seat.
So it's like, while all of this is happening, she's looking around the forest, and then all of a sudden, he's just above the car.
Yeah.
So yeah, that didn't make no sense to me.
Huge plot hole, in my opinion.
I agree with you there, because there's just like, say, no way anybody on the planet could do that while fighting off somebody and climbing a tree, and like there's no way.
And also, how did the car like perfectly park below that tree?
I know, exactly, right? And like how, like it just
like even if the rope was already like wrapped around the tree, they would have saw it. They would have drove right into it. Yeah, that took me out of the movie. Still an enjoyable movie, I think, but definitely a huge plot hole. But that kind of ran in line with the other parts too. Like, there's a scene where a dog gets microwaved.
Yes.
At a house party.
Yes.
There was nobody in the kitchen at a house party? I just find that really hard. Like a huge house party, may I add. I just can't imagine there was nobody in the kitchen.
Yeah, nobody sees the person putting the dog in the microwave.
Yeah, like
that's so odd.
But it's all timing. It's all like they want us to see that, right? And
exactly.
I get it, but I don't like it. I don't think it's realistic. So that was one of the flaws for me with this movie, is that the kills per se were not realistic.
And to me, I think that's why I've never enjoyed the thought of a horror movie as much as I liked this one, is that nothing ever seems super realistic. But you're right, this is like kind of a different level of horror movie in my opinion, and so it's a different level of realism needed.
Completely. Or like Dean being ran over and hitting the parking spikes.
That would never happen.
Well, it would never happen, but also like, why did he not like go left or right? Like, why did he just go straight like forever until he hit the spikes?
Like,
he could have easily just moved away from the car.
Like the car was going 0.001 kilometers an hour. He could have rolled.
He could have, but he didn't, and he died. The movie is about Natalie trying to save her friends, figure out why this is happening. And the one character that I really enjoy, that I feel is often overlooked, is the roommate, the emo roommate. The one thing that I noticed is that online flirting hasn't really changed after all these years. Like, she was, talking through like an MSN chat type thing. And like, it was very much like, what are you wearing? What do you look like? And like, it felt like that still applies to first time dating on apps and stuff, right? And I liked it. I thought it was funny. But there was one moment she said in the chat to this guy that she has to get changed and like she'll be right back. So she leaves her room.
I know where this is going.
Goes to the dorm washroom and puts on lipstick. Like, just lipstick. Like, she didn't like brush her teeth, comb her hair, change her shirt.
And she was already wearing lipstick. She just reapplied it.
And like, there was no need to go to the washroom. Like, I'm sure there's a mirror inside their bedroom.
She could have done it typing a message and used her other hand to apply it.
I was just like, oh, and I get why they did it. They had to have her leave the dorm, but she could have gotten changed. They could have like had a shower scene or something, right? Like, actually see like she was actually getting ready to have sex, not just putting on lipstick. So I died. I literally died at that point. Because I didn't really notice it, like, watching all these times. This is the first time I noticed, like, she didn't get ready. She didn't do shit. Like, why did she leave the bedroom? Like, yeah, so she died.
Yeah. She goes back, she's dead. It's classic.
How did you feel about the Paul red herring? Because I feel like watching you watch this movie, after the professor got killed and you had to remove him from your list,
yes,
I felt like you thought it really was Paul.
I did. There's Brenda and Natalie who are friends. And I thought that he knew that Brenda liked him. And he was obviously trying to get with Natalie. And I thought that that was his way of making them feud and be like a bad person and then would eventually kill. And then I think that he was a reporter, but looking into it, like, I thought that he definitely knew a lot and was always disappearing at random times. So I did think for a bit that he was the killer. Who was in the trunk of his car?
That was the professor.
That was the professor,
at that point,
right?
You still thought it was the professor.
Yes, because I still thought it was the professor. I couldn't remember The dean just died and we never seen him again. No one ever really found him until the very end, I think.
No, I think Reese found him.
Right, she did, because that's why she couldn't get a hold of him, right. So, yeah, as soon as the professor died, it kind of took that. They both ended up running, and
Brenda and Natalie, yeah.
Paul was following them into the forest, and then magically Natalie's out, and they're gone, and I'm like, well, Brenda's dead, because she's with the killer.
But we would find out things weren't exactly as they seemed.
Not the case.
I felt like they were pushing Paul so hard that there was no way Paul could be the killer, but I was still surprised by the twist that it ultimately was. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to paint you a picture of this scene. So again, Natalie and Brenda are running through the woods, or the field, I guess, and they get split up. It is presumed that Paul has taken Brenda and murdered her. So Natalie, obviously scared, is just trying to get back to the town, find a way out, or save Brenda. She's not really sure what she wants to do at this point, right? And it's raining. It's raining hard. And Natalie can hear Brenda screaming from a building. Now, I think it's time to reveal the twist because it kind of correlates with my question. Mm-hmm. But it turns out this whole time, Natalie's best friend in college, Brenda, is the murderer.
Yes.
Okay? How did Brenda know that Natalie would be near that said building? And how did she know that Natalie could hear her from inside this building on like the 14th floor of it? And it's raining. You wouldn't hear anything in this situation. So how did Brenda know that Natalie would be in that spot and wouldn't hear her?
Not only that, but what confuses me is Brenda. That woman seems to be fucking everywhere. Okay, because Natalie and her are running through the forest. Brenda drops back. There's no more Brenda. She's behind Natalie now. Natalie gets in a car and starts driving, ditches that car, and magically Brenda has found herself in a building. Like,
well, Natalie didn't find a car. Natalie found the
janitor
yeah,
who drove her, and then she thought the janitor was the killer. Which brings me to, why the fuck does everyone have these black fur hooded coats in this movie?
So the killer wears like a winter jacket with a fur trim around the hood. And there are many points in the movie where they meet random people who might be the killer, and they all have this same jacket.
Yeah.
This is like a small town, in my opinion. I don't remember where it was. Midwest America.
Yeah.
It appears to be a small town. Growing up in a small town myself, I do understand that, potentially. Growing up in the 90s again, we only had one or two clothing stores. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't like 1,000 jackets to pick from. There would be like 2 rolling racks, and there'd be 3 different styles of jackets. Yeah. So it's not that far-fetched that a small town would have very similar jackets, especially in the 90s. No, there's no online shopping. Mm-hmm. There's no going to a city to go buy your jacket. That part is realistic to me, but not the part that the old man had the jacket, the young girl had a jacket, the swimmer had a jacket. Everyone of different age groups had this jacket, which that part did not make sense. Yeah. I think Urban Legend is one of the least popular movies of the kind of teen horrors that was the 90s. So I think it got a free pass in those moments where it's like, you know what, that's not believable, fine. But I'm enjoying this movie. Let's just keep going. And I think we can agree that we both did enjoy this movie.
Yes.
But it has these flaws that didn't deter us from not liking it.
Yeah, I still enjoyed it just the same, even though I'm like, that didn't make any sense at all.
So it's weird because we watch other movies and we go, okay, these things don't make sense, so that's why I don't like this movie. Mm-hmm. But this one somehow gets a free pass.
Made it more... And I think it is because you say they are kind of... And I'm not saying that this was intentional, but they're kind of putting a comedic twist, a little bit of comedic relief in the movie. And I think that we're turning those negatives into that comedic relief.
We can laugh at those moments.
And we're laughing about it, and it's kind of almost making the movie better for us rather than it just being so serious all the time. Yeah, that's
a great point. I think that's very true. It doesn't answer the questions of how Natalie got to that place.
That is true. Yeah.
But she did. So Natalie hears Brenda crying, and she goes into I think it's an old part of the university, and goes up, and Brenda's laying on the bed, presumably dead. She stops screaming. What did you think at that moment? Did you think she was dead?
Yes, 100%. I wrote down we have notes, and I wrote down all of the characters, and I put if they were dead and the number that they got killed in. And I put beside her that she was dead, and then it got scribbled out because very quickly learned that she was not dead. I thought 100% she was dead, and at that point, it was almost like, okay, it has to be. If I wasn't thinking that it was Paul before, it has to be Paul.
There's no one left.
There's no one left, and there's no one else that was around or with her at the time.
So does that mean that this movie is so good because it never puts Brenda ever in track of being the killer? Or is it just convenient? Like, oh, they made Brenda the killer? Like, that's odd. Like, what do you think? Do you think the movie is so good at taking your attention away? Or is that not fair?
No, I thought that it was well written because of that. I never, ever once suspected that it was going to be Brenda, and that caused my brain to explode when I figured, like, when she
got up and hit Natalie.
Yeah, when she got up and punched Natalie in the face, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? It's Brenda? I just wrote that she was dead. I was so confused, and never once did I ever put that it was there was no reason for it to be Brenda, and I think that's what made it such a good movie. Like, I think that's well done.
The twist makes this movie.
Yeah.
Completely. And I think that's why it is on some people's like top 10 list of like 90s horror movies, because that twist I think is really exciting, and you don't see that done very well. That twist appears in other movies, but it comes off as cheesy or as an add-on, like, oh, they didn't know how to end it, so they just made that person the killer. But they did give Brenda depth, and like if you actually go back and look at it, you know, Brenda does talk about, you know, that she's new to the state and she's new to the school, and if you watch the scenes, she's missing from a good chunk of this movie. It's funny how we never think it's her, but she's not in any of the scenes. They paint it that it is her. You go to the house party scenes and like she just disappears.
After she kills Sasha, she just comes out of nowhere. And you know what? I thought it was weird that she just came out of nowhere, but not in the sense that I was like, oh, maybe she's the killer. It was just like, okay, why are you here? Like, there was no reason. You didn't get killed. You weren't around. This was a Paul and Natalie scene.
She did say that she heard Sasha crying on the radio station, which is why she was there.
Yes, but it was like, I feel like once again, it was something she didn't need to be. She didn't, but that's their way of painting it. But it completely went over my head. Like, I never thought that it would have been her even at that part. I just thought it was odd that it was unnecessary for her to be there, but now I know why she needed to be there.
That's fair. As a kid watching this movie, I really thought Sasha would live. Her death sequence is quite long.
It's very long. I thought she was going to live too,
You
especially
know?
after she fell over the stairs and lived. I was like, oh, she's not dying today.
100%. It's like, it has to be like at least a 5-minute scene of her running away and like falling and running away, and she does get murdered very brutally.
You know what does, and I get it's a horror movie thing, and you know I don't watch a lot of them, so this is a classic, but it bothered me so much, is Sasha, she's running around in her heels, and she's running very slowly, but it's fast. And then the killer is doing the classic, just like slow walk. And it's like, if you're going to kill the lady, just run. Like,
I think with like this one in particular, if you see someone running, you can usually tell if it's a girl or a guy.
That is true. Yes.
You know, usually. So I think a running scene would definitely potentially show like,
Ruin
oh, it's Brenda.
The plot
you
twist,
know, yeah. So let's go back to Brenda is revealed as the killer. And she reveals that it was Natalie and Michelle, the girl from the very beginning, who did a horrible stunt with flashing their lights on Brenda's boyfriend while he was driving, blinding him, crashing his car, and killing him. What did you think of that reveal?
I never put that together. I was like, okay. I knew that it had something to do with Michelle, obviously, but I didn't know what it could have been. And until Brenda said anything, I had no idea. The urban legend thing does make sense to me, right? So I think that was kind of
Brenda's motive, is that they killed her boyfriend unintentionally with an urban legend by making it real. So she was then going to torture them by killing everyone they knew with urban legends. But here's my big question after finishing this movie that I, again, didn't notice it until this viewing. Why did she torture Natalie and not Michelle, who was the one driving?
Yes, that's what I thought too, because Michelle was the first one dead, so that confused me.
Yeah, like, technically I feel Natalie should have been the first one to die, because she was just there and didn't stop it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But maybe that was her reasoning, was that that
she could have done something.
So if she did something, she never would have seen all of her other friends die too, because none of this ever would have happened if Natalie just stopped it. But now she had to see, you know, her high school best friend die. She had to see all of her friends die. She blah, 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 right?
Yeah, love interests.
And all that stuff, right? So I think maybe that's why Brenda kept her around, was to be like, you should have done something, because if you would have done something, no one would have been dead.
Fair. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. So in that moment where Brenda reveals everything, Paul comes into the situation, and Brenda has already said that her motive now is to frame Natalie for all the murders, give Paul the story, and then Paul will fall in love with her. And Paul hears this. I enjoyed your reaction during this scene, if you kind of want to talk about Paul coming in and talking to Brenda about everything.
I mean, okay, first of all, where the hell did Paul come from? This is what I don't get about these movies. He was running chasing the girls in a forest, and he would have been left behind with Brenda. Brenda didn't kill him. And then he wasn't with Brenda, and now he's just in the spot where they are. Like, how did he know they were there?
Good point.
So that kind of confused me. And then Paul turns on Natalie and is like, I will love you. I will publish your story. I will. You know, it's very...
She doesn't fall for it.
Yeah.
She pretends like she does.
Yeah, she pretends she falls for it, and he's like, cool, I did it. And then...
Brenda's like, fuck you.
She doesn't. And that is what shocked me. So I knew that Paul was playing a game. It's the fact that, like, that was another little twist for me where I was like, I didn't see that. The acting was good because I didn't see her not falling for it coming.
Right.
And then I believe that's when Reese, who we didn't even talk about being in the room at this point. Reese is in the room, by the way.
Reese has been there for a while, too.
I think she got shot, and she's been on the ground for a little bit. Just to fill y'all in.
But again, how did Reese know they were there? Like,
exactly. Like, and she just comes in, she's like, I know the dean's dead. And then it's just...
Because at that point, Brenda was stabbing Natalie, about to cut open her stomach to pull out her kidney or whatever she could get out of her.
Yes.
And that's when Reese came in and like stopped that situation, but then Reese got shot. So then Reese kind of saves the day, and she has a second gun. This security guard, I don't think she was even a cop. I think she was just a security guard for the school.
She stole the gun, I think.
But she had two of them. Like, she had a second gun. Why did she wait so long to pull it out?
I know. Shoot. When you walked in and you saw someone trying to take someone's liver out, maybe shoot them. That's my thing.
Maybe, but she didn't. So the part that got me, though, was Reese is on the floor. She pulls out a second gun, and she shoots Brenda, and she falls out the window. Okay? So, like, as a human being, I would probably stay with Reese because she's on the floor literally dying. Like, blood is coming out of her.
Yes.
You know, maybe go outside and make sure Brenda is, like, actually dead. But, like, they leave Reese and they're like, don't worry, like, the ambulance is coming. Like, ciao. And it's just like, I just couldn't believe it. You don't just leave someone on the ground dead. You know,
like,
where did Paul and Ellie have to go so bad?
And why would you go like, hey, 911 operator? Yeah, we just need an ambulance for one lady in this school. No, there's no murderers here or anything. It's fine. Don't send cops. Like, who does that? You know, like, let's call the police on the lady who just murdered half our freaking friend group. That would be nice.
So then Paul and Natalie leave because they're terrified, and Brenda makes her reveal. She's in the backseat of the car and she's alive again.
Dun, dun, dun. That bitch don't die, huh?
Oh, no, she doesn't.
I wasn't as shocked as what happens next. So that one didn't shock me as much.
Okay, so they get into the fight in the car, and Paul like slams on the brakes, and Brenda falls through the windshield into a river to her death, finally. To her
demise, yes.
Yeah. And we come to an ending where we go back to a group of college students who are sharing the story about Michelle and Natalie and how they battled this Brenda character. And in the final scene, we see Brenda looking a little bit different, telling the group that she's going to tell them the real story. So here's my question. Is everything we saw what really happened? Or is it the story of that guy who was sitting there, his version of this urban legend? And is there an actual version that Brenda has that is different?
So, in my opinion, what happened isn't what happened. And the only reason I say that is because right before they cut to this scene, it's Paul and Natalie sitting in the car after, maybe before or after Brenda reveals herself, and they go, this is going to turn into an urban legend one day, and it's going to turn, Brenda's going to become a man, and this and that. So I don't think that it is the real, true story that just got told. I think that it...
So that was his version. We think we heard his version of the story. Which I think is a really cool twist in itself, too. That, like, everything we saw potentially wasn't even real.
Yeah, it was a storytelling.
Which then, if you think about it, all the flaws that we have with this movie aren't flaws. It's just what happens when people share stories. Things start to not make sense. Things are not linear anymore. So that rope situation doesn't apply because it's someone's version of this story. Mm-hmm. The reality doesn't matter anymore. So are the flaws of this movie or the jacket all being the same? That's his version. Was there any flaws in this movie?
Did the people even wear jackets?
That's the point. So, like, this movie technically has no flaws because it's someone's version of this story.
Exactly.
That's kind of ingenious.
I really like how this was done. I think it was beautiful. I think it ended beautifully. I really love the plot twist of it being an urban legend in itself. It was an urban legend movie about urban legends, about a story about urban legends.
Inception.
It was crazy.
It is a good movie, and I think people overlook it because they see teen actors again, they see the popular people, and they're like, oh, gross. And I do feel like, again, 90s, there's lots of, like, slasher movies, and this came towards the end, 98, so there had already been many, many years of it. I think people were just tired of the genre and didn't give this the opportunity to shine.
Well, and I think that this is a very nice introduction for me into horror movies because I don't like horror movies, but as I said to you, I didn't realize that would be a classification of a horror movie. I hate regular horror movies, I guess, that everyone
or like modern day horror movies,
I don't like that, but if this is considered a horror movie, get me started on these. I'll watch those all day long.
So again, for our ratings, it's a 3-star rating, edge of your seat rating. Did it keep you engaged? For me, I gave it a 3. Even after all these years and watching this movie numerous times, I still could not wait for the end. I could not wait for Brenda to be revealed. Especially watching it with you for the first time. It's just like, oh, I hope she loves this because, like, I love this twist. Will she love this twist? So
I also gave it a 3. It gets a full rating from me. I just wanted to see more. I wanted to know who was going to die next. Like I said, after the professor died, I was like, well, there goes my bet. So what happens now? So yes, 3 for sure.
Perfect. How do we feel about the acting?
Yeah, I gave it a 2. But once again, this is out of my genre range. So I had nothing to compare it to, which is kind of what I was trying to do. But I mean, it's your average, I would say.
I also gave it a 2. I felt it. And I think, like, Michelle really brought it down for me because I think she was not a great actress.
Yeah.
So if she had not been there, maybe it would have been a 3, but it got a 2 for me too. I think it hits the marks for what it was for a teen horror movie back in the 90s. You're not going to expect Academy Award type stuff. So I think we're going to be on the same page with this one. It's the climax/ending. It's a great ending. 3.
It is. I gave it a 2.5.
What?
Yes.
What?
The only reason being, the only negative thing that I have about it, for me, it is a lot of, and we talked about this, the ending, great. That's what gets like all of it. 2.5 for the ending for sure. But where it gets a little messy, there's just all of a sudden, there's just dead people showing up everywhere. This chick is literally everywhere at once. It's just like, this guy's dead. Then they open another door. And the dean's dead. And then they open this.
She somehow collected all the bodies and, like, kept them in this part of the university.
So for me, it was just a lot of, like, by the mid to end of the movie, it was just, you're not even seeing deaths anymore. They're just popping out of nowhere, everywhere. So that knocked down 0.5 for me. But still, great ending. For sure.
Fair. So next we have the script. Again, this does not apply to the acting per se, but what they are told to say and the overall storyline that involves dialogue. I originally gave this a 2, and I changed it to a 1. Yeah, I was surprised. And it's funny because now that we've had this conversation, I want to make it a 3, but the vote's already done, so I'm not going to change it. But what changed my mind is originally I took all of those negatives of like the rope scene, you know, how did she appear here and there? Like these things don't really line up or make sense. But now that we discussed that maybe the story never happened and it's someone's urban legend that they're sharing, there can be plot holes, there can be things that don't make sense. In that sense now, the script is ingenious and deserves complete 3 marks for that. But because we don't have a way to change the ratings, it stays a 1 for me, unfortunately.
Don't worry, I will carry this rating because I gave it a 3. I think as much as I just complained about how everything was all over the place, I think that the way that it was done to wind up the way that it ended makes the script a 3. It was very cluttered, very all over the place, but how they brought it all together in the end and then revealed that it might not even be true, 3.
I didn't have that view until this conversation, so it could have been higher, but it is what it is. And lastly, would you watch it again?
That is a big old 3.
And same for me, obviously, a solid 3. So my end score for Urban Legend was 12 points out of a possible 15.
Mine was 13.5 out of 15.
Which gave it a high score of 25.5 out of a possible 30, and is our current reigning champion for our favorite movie of this season.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's Urban Legend.
Urban Legends. Oh.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Revival.